Welcome to This Explainer. If you're a focused learner, someone really looking to master the weird little quirks of your own mind, well, you're in the exact right place. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a crowded room and suddenly felt like literally the entire place just stopped to stare at you? Or, okay, how about this? Have you ever spilled a little bit of juice down the front of your shirt? Or maybe posted a slightly risky photo on Instagram and immediately felt this crushing, overwhelming weight that absolutely everyone was judging you? Yeah, we've all been there. We all experience this intense, self-conscious feeling. It's this egocentric bias where we just kind of assume we're the star of everyone else's show. But the data tells a vastly different, and honestly, a much more comforting story. And it's a story that actually holds the key to reducing this anxiety for good.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1. The Barry-Manilow experiment. So, to really understand this bias, we've got to look at a classic, honestly kind of hilarious study by Cornell University psychologist Thomas Gilovich. He and his colleagues set up an experiment that was perfectly designed to make people feel painfully conspicuous. I mean, they literally forced a university student to put on a deeply embarrassing Barry-Manilow t-shirt. They then had that poor student briefly walk into a room full of their peers who were all busy taking a survey. Afterward, the researchers pulled the wearer aside and asked, hey, how many people in that room do you think actually noticed your embarrassing shirt?
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive gap between our minds and reality. The wearers confidently predicted that nearly half the room, like 46%, would remember the shirt. But the actual audience who noticed, just 23%, literally half of what was expected. See, the wearer experienced every agonizing second from inside their acutely self-conscious mind, right? While the observers, they just saw a brief, barely noticeable interruption to their paperwork.
But wait, it wasn't just embarrassing shirts. They actually ran the experiment again with shirts the students felt genuinely cool wearing. We're talking faces like Bob Marley, Martin Luther King Jr., or Jerry Seinfeld. The wearers strutted in, estimating 48% of the room would notice their awesome shirt. The actual number, a tiny, microscopic 8%. People repeatedly overestimated how noticeable they were, and it didn't even matter whether they were feeling deeply embarrassed or highly confident.
Which brings us to Section 2, the tapping experiment.
Now this is another mind-blowing gap between our internal world and external reality. It comes from Elizabeth Newton's PhD dissertation in psychology at Stanford University, and it perfectly shows how our brains just completely lie to us. Newton created this brilliantly simple test. She had participants tap out the rhythm of a super well-known song, like Happy Birthday, on a table with their finger. Meanwhile, an observer tried to guess the song. Now think about it. When you are the tapper, you hear the full orchestration, the melody, the lyrics, it's playing loudly in your head. But the observer, with no access to your inner thoughts, they just hear random, disconnected, rhythmic finger taps.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer delusion of the tappers. Because they heard the song so crystal clearly in their own heads, the tappers predicted the observers would guess the song correctly about 50% of the time. The actual success rate? A microscopic 3%. No way, right? 3%! We just completely overestimate how much of our internal experience is actually transmitting to the outside world.
Moving on to Section 3, defining the terms.
So, let's lock in the actual psychological names for these massive gaps between our internal perception and our external reality. First up, we have the spotlight effect. This is a cognitive bias causing people to overestimate how much others notice their appearance, mistakes, or actions. Basically, the audience you've constructed in your head is considerably larger and usually far more judgmental than the one actually paying attention in reality.
Next is the illusion of transparency. This is our tendency to overestimate how easily others can detect our internal emotions or thoughts. It's kind of like when I'm nervous speaking in public, and I just assume everyone in the crowd can see my anxiety radiating off me. But in reality, they actually just think I'm doing fine. Both of these effects share the exact same underlying asymmetry. Your own experience is immediate and super detailed, while another person receives only tiny fragments of your behavior.
Let's move to Section 4, why our brains do this.
This all raises a pretty huge mystery, right? Like, why are our brains hardwired to make us feel so self-conscious and hypervigilant all the time? To understand this, we've got to trace our anxiety all the way back to our tribal ancestors. See, 100,000 years ago, early humans lived in small groups. Being part of that group, having that deep need to belong, was literally a matter of survival. If you made a mistake and got rejected or left out of the tribe, you'd struggle to survive alone. So our modern social anxiety is really just an ancient survival mechanism still running on modern hardware.
As psychologists Joseph Forgis and Kipling Williams note in their book The Social Self, that ancient need to not get kicked out of the tribe is exactly what feeds our modern anxieties. It is literally why your brain is wired to be overly attentive to how others evaluate you, whether that's, stage fright before a big presentation at work or panic over how many likes an Instagram post is getting.
Finally, Section 5, How to Reduce Anxiety.
So, now that we know we're usually completely wrong about being watched so closely, let's explore some actionable, science-backed ways to actually reduce this social anxiety. Here are the first 3 steps. 1. Reframe your negative thoughts. Turn "I'm not good enough" into "I'm still learning." 2. Consider the illusion of transparency. Literally remind yourself that people cannot read your mind or see your pounding heart. And 3. Take a third-person perspective. There was this 2016 study by McRae and colleagues that found if you spill a drink at a party, simply imagining the event from an outsider's point of view, just asking yourself, "Would I harshly judge someone else for doing this?" drastically cuts your feelings of embarrassment.
Building on that, practicing present-moment mindfulness for just 5 to 15 minutes a day has been shown to significantly decrease egocentrism and improve your overall judgment of a situation. You should also recognize the positives of being uniquely you, maybe by jotting down your strengths. And importantly, and I really want to stress this, if social anxiety ever becomes overwhelming, there is absolutely no shame in seeking professional support.
So the crucial point here is that you can actively train your brain to stop hyperfixating on yourself. 2 incredibly effective evidence-based therapies for this are cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which helps reduce safety behaviors and avoidance. And then there's neurofeedback therapy, which leverages your brain's natural neuroplasticity to literally adapt and reorganize itself.
And neurofeedback is just fascinating. Using programs like MindLift, you literally play a video game driven by your actual brainwaves. When your brainwaves enter an optimal range, meaning you're remaining calm and focused, you receive positive feedback and earn points in the game. It naturally conditions your brain to stay composed in stressful, spotlight-triggering situations.
Ultimately, all of this data points to a reality that should be a massive, massive relief. Everyone is the center of their own world. The people you think are intensely scrutinizing you, they're actually too busy with their own inner monologues, their own phone notifications, and their own private worries to hyper-focus on your minor flaws. They are the star of their own movie, just like you are of yours.
It's a deeply humbling realization, for sure, but it's also incredibly empowering. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If nobody is watching you as closely as you think they are, what are you going to do with your newfound freedom?